scholarship, an immense contribution to the world of devotion to Sri Krishna of Sri Ramanujacharya. But even before Ramanuja came here, Melkote had a long history, going back millennia to the previous ages. And it has had enormous spiritual significance even from those days. Melkote, the place where we are in now, is north of the river Kaveri, east of the Sahyadri, and it is about in a place where there are strong winds. I remember one Sri Vaishnava here telling me that Vadhari, one of the Acharyas, so I think it was Vedanta Desikan probably, saying that in winter the winds in the Sahya mountains, these are called Sahyadri. Adri means mountain. So Sahyadri means the mountains called Sahya. The winds in Sahya are asahya, because they're very strong winds that blow here and becomes very cold in the winter season. And it's a quiet place so far, thankfully not much commercialization. You can still feel the devotion, very few residents here. You don't see too many hotels and too many other forms of modern day contamination that have plagued many other holy places. Melkote, the glories of this dham have been described in many places, and specifically it is mentioned in the Narada Purana as well as the Matsya Purana. And there is a section called the Yadavagiri Mahatmya, in which this place has been called as the Narayanatri. In Satya Yuga, it was called Narayanatri because of the presence of Lord Narayan here, its association with Lord Narayan. Many of you probably have already been to Badrinath, where Lord Badri Vishal or Badri Narayan presides. Badri refers to the tree, the berry tree, and Lakshmi Devi represents that. So Badri Narayan means Lakshmi Narayan. So you would have noticed that after we had darshan of Chaluva Narayan in the main temple, you were requested to go to another small temple just across. And that was the temple of Lord Vadhari Narayan. So this place is also called Southern Vadhari Narayan, Badrinath. How many of you have not been able to go to Badrinath in the Himalayas? Okay. So I'm not saying you shouldn't go, you should certainly go. It is an excellent pilgrimage, most wonderful, but there is a risk. What is the risk? The risk is you will not want to come back. It is so wonderful to be there. In any case, even if some of you have not been in a position to go there, and you think perhaps you may not be in a position to go there in the future, never mind. You can come to Dakshin Badrinath and get the same benefit. So since all of us have taken darshan of Lord Badrinath here, we have also got the benefit of going to Badrinath in the Himalayas. And you saw that Badri tree over there in the front. I don't remember where the Badri tree is in Badri Narayan. It's not so much visible in the Himalayas, but here it's very much there. So therefore in Satya Yuga this was called Narayanadri. In the next age, which is Treta Yuga, it was called Vedadri, because it was here that the incarnation of the Supreme Lord, Lord Dattatreya, appeared here and taught Vedas to many of his disciples. Amongst them was Prahlad. It is said that he also came here to learn the Vedas from Dattatreya. So in that age, it was called Vedadri. In Dwapar Yuga, it was called Yadavadri. or Yadugiri or Yadavagiri, because the Yadavas came here to worship the Lord, and they moved around in these places also. And in Kali Yuga, it is called Yati Shaila. Shaila comes from the word Shila. Shila is a stone. Shaila therefore refers to a huge stone which is a mountain or a hill. Yati means a sannyasi. Which sannyasi? Ramanujacharya. Because in this age, it is due to Srila Ramanujacharya that the glories of Melkote Dham have been spread far and wide, and it has come into prominence. Therefore, this place has been named after him. It is said that actually many sages come here and they even reside here, and perhaps they are still here in forms that we cannot see. In the Sri Sampradaya, a lot of importance is given to Melkote, and Ramanuja apparently even said that this is the gateway to Vaikuntha. So you come here, anyone who comes here is assured of a destination, of the ultimate destination of Vaikuntha. And Ananda Gauranga Prabhu was telling me this morning that he also said that if you can't do any other thing, at least come and build a hut for yourself and live in Melkote. Just do that. This is Ramanuja's instructions to people, that you just do this much and live in Melkote, then you are assured of a very, very auspicious destination with the Lord in the future life. The Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, as you all know, is one of the four bona fide Vaishnava Sampradayas. And to be bona fide, every Sampradaya must begin with the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord teaches it to someone who is his close associate and devotee, and then a Sampradaya begins from that devotee. So we come in the Brahma Sampradaya. Lord Krishna taught Brahma, and then Brahma started this Sampradaya. So we are specifically in the Brahma, Madhva, Gaudiya Sampradaya. Another Vaishnava Sampradaya is started by the Lord by teaching it to Lord Shiva. So that is called the Rudra Sampradaya. Now in the Madhva Sampradaya or the Brahma Sampradaya, the Sampradaya Acharya is Madhvacharya. In the Rudra Sampradaya of Lord Shiva, who are the Sampradaya Acharyas? Vishnu Swami. Vishnu Swami was another great sannyasi who also came from the south. Actually, all these great sannyasis, like even Nimbarka, it is said, came from here. Krishna, Bilva Mangal Thakur came from here. So many, many great acharyas came from this region, perhaps from somewhere around here. Then the third one is the Kumara Sampradaya. The Lord taught the four Kumaras, and they started this Sampradaya. The main Acharya there is Nimbarka Acharya. And finally, there is a Sampradaya that was begun by Lord Vishnu by teaching Lakshmi Devi or Shri. And Shri started this Sampradaya, and Srila Ramanujacharya is the Sampradaya Acharya for the Shri Sampradaya. So the Shri Vaishnavas, as they are called, emphasize a lot on two things, among others. One is Shuddha Bhakti, which means serving and loving the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna without any material expectations, unalloyed devotion to the Lord. And the second is Vaishnava Seva. They give a lot of importance to this. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it is explained by Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, has taken two main points from each of the four Vaishnava Sampradayas, and these find prominence in the Gaudiya Siddhanta as well. So Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur says that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took these two important points from the Sri Sampradaya. Shuddha Bhakti and Vaishnava Seva. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his compositions is also drawn significantly from the works of the Sri Vaishnava Acharyas, especially Yamunacharya, the grand spiritual master of Srila Ramanujacharya. And the other Acharyas have also liberally referred to the commentaries of the Sri Vaishnava Acharyas. So as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, therefore, it is not incompatible for us to study the lives and teachings of these great Acharyas and to hear from some of their pastimes and to visit the holy places that are associated with them. Now, Melkote is one amongst the Divya Desams of the Sri Vaishnavas. The Sri Vaishnavas particularly point out that there are 108 holy places called Divya Desams. And amongst these 108, there are 4 which are particularly prominent. One is Sri Rangam, where the Lord resides as Ranganath. And that is called the Bhoga Mandap, because there the Lord eats many varieties of dishes in great opulence. The next is Tirupati, where Lord Venkateshwara or Lord Balaji resides. And that place is called Pushpa Mandap, because one very special feature of the worship there is that he is worshipped with gorgeous flower decorations. In fact, one of Ramanuja's disciples, or several of them, they shifted to Tirumala on top of the hill simply to grow flowers and offer it to Lord Venkateshwara. So one time amongst a group of his disciples, Ramanuja asked, "So Lord Balaji, he needs more flowers, but there aren't many flowers growing around. So who amongst you would like to relocate to Tirumala and live there and grow flowers and serve Lord Venkateshwara like that?" And we must remember that in those days there was no TTD, there were no roads going up, there were jungles, there were animals, wild animals all around, there was dense forest, there was no place to stay, there was no facility for anything. So naturally, none of the disciples were eager to go there, but their prime reason, or the reason for the reluctance was that they would miss the association of Ramanuja. But nevertheless, service and separation is also a very important service in Krishna consciousness. And that can sometimes be more pleasing. So one devotee, Anantacharya, raised his hand, "I'm willing to go." Then Ramanuja was very pleased with him and he said, "All right, you have all my blessings." And then he went there, he resided there, and all he did was grow flowers for Krishna, for the Lord, and offer it to him. Many of the alvars in other places also did just that. So it's Pushpa Mandap, that is Tirupati. Then Kanchipuram, where Lord Varadaraj resides, is called Tyaga Mandap, because there you have many people who live a life of renunciation. People also took sannyas. Ramanujacharya took sannyas in Kanchipuram. He was a householder before. And we'll come to these pastimes either sometime this evening or perhaps tomorrow. So it's called Tyaga Mandap. And finally the 4th place is Melkote. And Melkote is called Jnana Mandap. Jnana Mandap is the place of knowledge, where from time immemorial great sages have come and expounded on the Vedic teachings. I mentioned about Lord Dattatreya teaching the Vedas here. And it is said that even today, many sages keep coming in forms that we cannot see, of course, because we do not have the eyes in this Kali Yuga to see that. They come here and have discussions from the Vedas. So this has been known from time immemorial as a place of cultivation of Vedic knowledge. Also interestingly, These four places have four distinct characteristics. In Sri Rangam, now I don't know Tamil, but these are words that I heard from Ananda Gauranga Prabhu. Is he here? Yeah. So he educated me on some Tamil words. So if my pronunciation is not correct, you please forgive me. So these four places, they are famous for four things. In Sri Rangam, when the Lord is taken out, he moves, just like in Jagannath Puri, when he's taken out for the Rath Yatra, they sway. The Lord sways like this. The Pandas, when they carry Lord Jagannath, they move in a very rhythmic way. It's almost like they're dancing and they're going. And the Lord goes up and down on that. Similarly, in Ranga Kshetra, Sri Rangam also, the Lord's gate is very, very prominent. It's called Nadai. In Tirupati, it is the Prasadam, and that is called Vadai. Tirupati is known for the Vadai. Nowadays it's the Laddu. So Tirupati is famous for the Prasadam. Kanchipuram is famous for the umbrella. What is the umbrella called? Kodai. Kodai. Okay, all of you know more than me. Kodai. Okay. The umbrella, because a huge umbrella. And then Melkote, or the crown, and that is called Modi. The Vayamudi is a diamond crown that the Lord wears. So these four places are known for these four things, the four important places of the Sri Vaishnavas. About the Vayamudi diamond crown, it is said that it actually came from Vaikuntha. Prahlad Maharaj's son, Virochana, stole this diamond from Vaikuntha, diamond crown. So thefts happen in Vaikuntha also. And then he brought it here to the material world, he brought it and took it to Patala Loka. Eventually, upon request from all the devotees of Vaikuntha who were saying, oh, how come this diamond crown is stolen? So they chose Garuda to retrieve this diamond crown. So Garuda did so. And then as he was flying towards Vaikuntha, he was going over Dwarka, and somehow he couldn't fly beyond Dwarka. He was getting dragged down. And then he got into Dwarka, and then it was given to Krishna, because this was the time when Krishna and Balaram were having their manifest pastimes in Dwarka. So then Krishna and Balaram were very happy to see this crown. Now, one time what happened is that Balaram had come on a tour, a pilgrimage of holy places, because he did not want to participate in the battle of Kurukshetra. So he also came to Melkote. He had darshan of Thiru Narayana here. And then he remembered, he saw and he realized that this deity exactly resembles the deity, the small deity that we have of Narayana in Dwarka. So very astonishing. So he went back to Dwarka and informed Krishna. So Krishna said, no, how can it be? But in any case, he carried along their deity, the small deity, which is called Sampat Kumar or Chaluva or Rama Priya, and for reasons we'll see a little later. So they brought the diamond crown here with the deity, and then the small deity, the Utsav Murti, Chaluva or Sampat Kumar, was then installed here. So Krishna Balaram also came here to Melkote. And it was they who actually ensured that this Vayamudi would come here and we would adorn the head of the Lord here. Here Lakshmi Devi is known as Yadugiri Nayaki. She is the heroine of this place. The hero is, of course, Lord Narayana. Now the main temple over here in Melkote, as we all saw today, is the Thiru Narayana temple. It is also called a Chaluva Narayana temple, For those of you who are Kannada, Tamil speaking, you know Chaluva means beautiful, right? So the beautiful Narayana. Now there is a big deity, Thiru Narayana, and there is a small deity which is the Utsava deity, which is called Chaluvarai or Sampat Kumar or Rama Priya. So there is a history to both these deities. The deity of Thiru Narayana was received originally by Brahma on a Vimana. Then sometime later, Brahma gave this deity of Lord Thiru Narayana to Sanat Kumar, one of the 4 Kumaras. Now, Sanat Kumar was happily worshipping Thiru Narayana, but Brahma was feeling the need for worshipping another deity. So then the Lord understood Brahma's desire. And from the heart of Thiru Narayana emerged another form, another deity who was called Chaluva Narayana. So Sanat Kumar brought the original deity of Thiru Narayana to Melkote, and Brahma gifted Chaluva Narayana, that is a small deity that had manifested from the heart of Thiru Narayana, to Lord Ramachandra. So it came into the Surya Vansha, the solar dynasty. Then Lord Ram gave it to his son Kusha. And then Kusha gave it to his daughter Kanakamalini, and who married Yadu Shekhara, who was a prince from the Yadu dynasty. Yadu dynasty is part of the Chandra Vansha, the moon dynasty. Lord Ram is from the solar dynasty. So then this deity of Chaluva Narayana came from the Surya Vansha to the Chandra Vansha, the solar dynasty to the lunar dynasty. And then through the Yadu Vansha it went down till it came to Krishna and Balaram, and eventually, as I mentioned, then Krishna and Balaram brought Chaluva Narayan here and installed him here. So this is the history of the small deity, the Utsav Murti, Sampat Kumar or Chaluvarai. And the main deity, Thiru Narayana, as I mentioned, was given by Brahma to Sanat Kumar, and Sanat Kumar brought it here directly to Melkote. Each holy place has its own Mahatmya, has its own glories, and there are Puranic stories about them, descriptions, historical narrations of various activities that happened here, the pastimes, and sometimes very extraordinary stories as well. So I'll just narrate 1 or 2 such stories. It is about a Brahmin called Sucharita. It is said that one time when he was taking bath in the Ganga, and he was thinking about this glorious Kalyani where we will be going this evening. And he was taking bath in the Ganga, but when he rose from the water, he emerged in the Kalyani here in Melkote, to demonstrate that the waters of the Kalyani are not different from the Ganga. There is also the famous story of his 8-year-old son called Narayan, who was asked to offer bhoga to the Lord. The boy offered rice to the Lord's deity, and the Lord physically ate everything. Although the Lord generally eats only with the eye, but in this case he ate everything physically, so there was nothing left in the plate. So the boy's mother came and demanded the plate of Mahaprasadam, and the boy said the Lord has already eaten it. So the mother presumed that the boy had eaten it because the plate had become empty. So she said, now there is no food, so now go and beg for food. How else are we going to eat? So he begged in 8 houses. And it is said that in 7 houses, Yaduguri Nayaki, that is Lakshmi Devi, personally arrived and gave bhiksha or alms of diamonds. And in one place, in one house, he got bhiksha of rice. So he took that back and went to his mother. So there are many such stories that abound here in holy places like this. This place, okay, fine. So I think we'll stop now for a short break. I'll just quickly speak about the Sapta Kshetra. In Melkote area, there are 7 important tirthas, 7 important places rather. One of them is a Yoga Narasimha Mandir, where we will go this evening. And when we go there, or perhaps when we come down, we'll speak a little bit about that. And we'll also talk about the Kalyani, the great big lake that is over there. And there are on all 4 sides of the lake, there are some important tirthas. So in very brief, we will discuss that. When we leave from here at 5:30, we will go to the Pushkar, to the lake, Kalyani. From there we will have to climb. There are 360 steps to climb. So those of you who have any physical problem or you are aged, then you can leave immediately at 5:30. Vehicles will be arranged so you can be the first to start climbing. Take your time to climb slowly. The others can come behind and they can catch up, take darshan of Lord Narasimhadev. If possible, there's no place there, but if possible, a little katha there, or we'll come down to the Kalyani and have katha over there for a few minutes only. So in the Kalyani there are 5 places that are related to the Kalyani there. And also there is a Paridhana Shaila Kshetra, which is at the opposite side. Tomorrow morning, after Mangalarati, we will take a japa walk. And we will go to these 2 places. And also a little further down on this side, there are 2 ponds here. So we'll cover some tirthas on either side of the Sanskrit Academy here. So we'll discuss the glories of those places in very brief tomorrow morning during our japa walk. And there are also many other Ashta Tirthas, 8 Tirthas. We'll cover that tomorrow morning in the japa walk. Veda Pushkarni. There is also a place further beyond called Dhanushkoti. And other holy places to which we will not be able to go in the short duration of time that we are here. So this is a brief background about the ancient history and the glories of Melkote. Now there are also many wonderful things that happened here in connection with Sri Ramanujacharya and after his arrival, that we will discuss at the relevant time when we reach those times in Ramanuja's life when he arrives here. But after we're going to take a short break now for 10 minutes where you can refresh yourself with some juice prasadam and then come back here very quickly and we will begin our discussion about Sri Ramanujacharya. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. That he is the Sampradaya Acharya for the Sri Sampradaya. Even though there are many exalted Paramahamsa devotees who were predecessors of Ramanujacharya in the Sri Sampradaya, specifically the Alvars, but they are distinguished from the Acharyas. The Alvars were simply too intoxicated with love of Godhead, and they were simply doing their personal service to the Lord, making garlands for the Lord, singing the glories of the Lord, and so on. The Acharyas, on the other hand, were not only doing that, but they were also actively engaged in propagating the mission of pure devotion everywhere. And thus they were expanding, they were making temples, publishing literature, engaging in debates with various proponents of opposing ideologies, and trying to establish the Siddhanta of pure devotion to Lord Krishna or Vishnu everywhere. So these were the Acharyas. So the Acharyas were like Yamunacharya, a great stalwart in the Sri Sampradaya. Bhakti Vinod Thakur has drawn liberally or has been influenced a great deal by his Stotra Ratnavali, the mood of helpless surrender and pure devotion to Krishna is exemplarily brought out in such compositions. So Yamunacharya had a great influence on the mind of young Ramanujacharya. As we will see a little later, Yamunacharya left this world before he could actually personally meet and instruct Ramanuja. However, the impact and the impression that was created in Ramanuja's mind by Yamunacharya's teachings, by his followers, and by the legacy that Yamunacharya left behind would, in a significant way, guide the thoughts and actions of Ramanuja in the years to come. The same kind of dynamism, the same kind of surrender, the same kind of emphasis on spreading the message of the Lord everywhere, the missionary zeal was seen very strongly in Ramanujacharya. Yamunacharya's story, the story of his life, is also extraordinary. But time does not permit us to narrate that today. We begin by the story of the birth of Sri Ramanuja. He was born exactly 1000 years ago in a place called Sri Perumbudur in Tamil Nadu. His father was Asuri Keshava Perumal. His mother's name was Bhudevi. Now, Yamunacharya had a beloved disciple whose name was Sri Shaila Purna, and he was also going to have a good impact on the life of Ramanuja later in the years to come. Sri Shaila Purna had two sisters. One was Bhudevi and the other was Sri Devi. It was Bhudevi who was married to Asuri Keshava Perumal, and eventually they had a son, a glorious son. When Sri Shaila Purna, who was a sannyasi, and he was a disciple of Yamunacharya, he had retired to Tirupati and he was rendering service over there. So when he heard the good tidings of a birth of a son to Bhudevi and Asuri Keshava Perumal, who was his dear friend also, he rushed there. He saw this child and was struck with wonder to see all the auspicious symptoms being manifest in his person. And he made a prediction. He said that this boy will do extraordinary things in the future. He will be extremely strong spiritually. He will leave a great impact. He will have a great impact on this world. He spoke extensively about the glories of this child. Everybody was overjoyed. Meanwhile, the sister of Bhudevi and Sri Shaila Purna, Sri Devi, she was married to Kamalanayana Bhatta in another place, and they also bore a son. And Sri Shaila Purna heard that and he also rushed there. He also saw similarly auspicious qualities in this boy. He named him Govinda, and he named the son of Bhudevi and Asuri Keshava Perumal as Ramanuja, who would serve Lord Ram in the same way that Lakshman served Lord Ram. And later on, after a certain period, in between, Govinda would have strayed away from the path of Vaishnavism and become a Shaiva. That story we will come to perhaps tomorrow, if time permits. But then he would be brought back into the fold again, and he would then become a stalwart associate of Sri Ramanuja. But in their childhood, Ramanuja and Govinda being first cousins, they were also very close friends and very similar in their dispositions and their natures. Both were very spiritually inclined, very virtuous by nature, very strong. They both grew up in very Brahminical surroundings. They went through the usual rites of passage, the usual samskaras that any Brahmana boy is supposed to undergo in a Vaishnava family. When Ramanuja attained the age of 16, as was the custom in those days, he was married. And he settled down to a householder life. But he was not satisfied because, as is the custom amongst the Brahmana boys, they have to pursue further studies in the Vedas. So he was eager to study the Vedanta and similar scriptures. So he was looking out for a guru who could teach him that. So he had to move from Sri Perambudur to Kanchipuram because he had heard of a renowned scholar whose name was Yadava Prakash. Yadava Prakash happily accepted Ramanuja as his student. Now it so happened that Yadava Prakash was an Advaitin. Advaitin means a Mayavadi, a person who did not believe that the Lord is ultimately a spiritual person. A Mayavadi is one who believes that the form of the Lord when he descends into this world is made of Maya, just like our body is also made of the material energy. They believe that in the ultimate situation the Lord is impersonal. So therefore their understanding, interpretation and explanation of the Vedic scriptures is quite different from that of the Vedas, of the Vaishnavas. In fact, the Vaishnavas feel great pain and sorrow and sometimes anger to hear the explanations of the Advaitins, of the Mayavadis. Now, young Ramanuja did not have an idea about this when he enrolled as a student at the school of Yadava Prakash. Time went on. One day, Yadava Prakash was speaking about a certain verse from the Taittiriya Upanishad, which is very famous, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, which means that Brahma, or the absolute truth, is Satyam, it is truth, Jnanam, that is knowledge, and Anantam, that means unlimited. So it's very simple if you have a direct understanding of the verse. But Yadava Prakash had a very convoluted and strange interpretation to this verse. He basically said that this means that the Brahman, it cannot have all of these things at one time. For example, if we say that there is a cow who has a broken horn, the same cow has no horn, and the same cow has a full horn, can all three attributes exist simultaneously in the cow? No. So Brahman is attributeless. Brahman has no attributes. So he was preaching in this way. And he was giving his own understanding of what it meant, what Anantam meant, what Jnanam meant. Ramanuja was very aggrieved to hear such an explanation. And he raised his hand and he spoke up. He says, "Sir, I think this is not a correct explanation." So Yadava Prakash was surprised. This was the first time anybody had challenged him in this manner. So he said, "If this is not the correct explanation, then let us hear what you have to say about this. What is your explanation?" Ramanuja pointed out the flaws in Yadava Prakash's explanation. And he said the analogy of the cow and the horns that you have given is not appropriate. You are denying the fact that the Brahma, the Supreme Brahman, has attributes. An attributeless Brahma has no existence, therefore cannot be Satyam. And if he is Satyam, then he must have all attributes including Jnanam and Anantam. A more appropriate analogy would be, a metaphor would be, for example, a flower. A flower can have various attributes simultaneously coexisting. A flower can be red, it can be fragrant, and can be soft, all at the same time. So in the same way, the Supreme Brahman has innumerable divine attributes. His exposition was so scholarly and logical, the fellow students were struck with wonder. But Yadav Prakash didn't take to it well. In great contempt and disdain, he scorned at young Ramanuja and said, "You arguing with me?" And Ramanuja was silent. That was all. That is how the whole discussion ended. After Ramanuja had spoken thus, this is the only sentence that Yadav Prakash spoke, because he had no points to make. The points that Ramanujacharya made were so convincing and logical that there was nothing that Yadav Prakash had left to say. Another time, there was another passage that Yadav Prakash was expounding on. Tasya yatha kapyasam pundarikam evam akshini. Pundarika and akshini. Akshini means eye. And the meaning of this actually was construed wrongly by Yadav Prakash, and he actually gave a very offensive and insulting statement, an interpretation of this verse. He interpreted it as follows. The word kapyasam, he split up as kapi and asa. Kapi means monkey, which is a fact. You see, in Sanskrit, words can be combined in various ways, in unlimited number of ways. So long as you follow the laws of grammar, you can create your own words, and they will be bona fide by combining certain roots and prefixes and so on, and suffixes, combining two words in a certain way. You can create new words if the laws of grammar are followed. So similarly, when you see a word, you could also split it up in different ways and give different meanings to it. That is the way that the Advaitins or the Mayavadis and others, they arrive at different translations of the same verse. If you look at the Vaishnava translations, it's one thing. If you look at the translations of those who are not Vaishnavas, they will split the words, understand it differently, and give a different meaning. So he understood the word kapyasam as follows. Kapi means monkey. That is true, because Kapi also refers to Hanuman. Kapi Dhvajaha, in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita we read, Arjuna is called Kapi Dhvaja because Hanuman was present on his flag, on his chariot. So Kapi means monkey, and Asa means the rear part, the bottom of any person. So he translated the word kapyasam means to be the bottom or the buttocks of a monkey, and akshini means eye. So he translated this verse to mean that the eyes of the Lord are reddish like the bottom of a monkey. Now at this time, young Ramanuja was massaging his teacher with oil. And when he heard this explanation, Yadav Prakash was lying down and speaking on about this. Ramanuja was so shocked to hear this. He felt such a surge of pain flowing through his body and his mind that suddenly tears welled up in his eyes. And these tears were hot because of the pain he was feeling. So some tears fell from Ramanuja's eyes onto the body of Yadava Prakash. Yadava Prakash's body was scorched by that hot tear. And he immediately said, "What happened? What is this? A tear, a hot tear. Why are you crying?" So Ramanuja said, "Sir, your explanation of this verse is so offensive. It gives me so much pain that you as a great teacher would explain the verses like this." So naturally, Yadav Prakash was quite upset. He said, "Again, you think you can explain better than me? So let us hear your explanation." So Ramanuja again explained it in a very brilliant way. He said the word kapyasam can be understood as follows. Ka means water. Pi comes from the word pibati, to drink. So water drinker. So who is the water drinker? The sun. The sun drinks up the water, evaporates the water. Even a lotus stem can be a kapi, because a lotus stem also drinks water, sucks up water through its stem. The word asa indicates to open. Actually, Ramanuja gave many explanations. I'm just giving one. It means to open, vikasane. So therefore, this verse truly means that the eyes of the Lord are as beautiful as a blossoming lotus flower. That is the real meaning of this verse. And you have interpreted it in such an offensive manner. Now Yadav Prakash was annoyed. He felt his dignity, his prestige had been poked and been impaled. So he told Ramanuja, "You have no place in my ashram, in my school. You should leave from here immediately." So Ramanuja did not say a word and he quietly left. Meanwhile, Yadav Prakash was beginning to get worried, because he had seen these instances of Ramanuja's scholarship and his brilliance, and he had seen how his own scholarship had paled into insignificance in front of the brilliance of Ramanuja. Because Yadav Prakash was not a devotee of the Lord, he was not humble, and he was very eager to have name, fame, prestige as being a great scholar, a great guru, a great teacher, a great Vedantist, and so on. So he felt that Ramanuja was going to be a threat to his name, fame, and prestige. So he could not sleep at night. He was tormented by the thoughts of Ramanuja's obviously impending greatness. He could see that this young boy in future would be a really great stalwart scholar. So what to do? So all his other students actually were his loyal followers. They were not like Ramanuja, who questioned him when he made a mistake. So he called these students when Ramanuja was not present. And he said, "All of you are my faithful students. But this Ramanuja, he always dares to question me and to point out what he thinks are mistakes in my explanations. And now this has continued too far. Tomorrow he is going to grow in his stature, and he will become recognized in the society, and he will start criticizing me. My prestige will be destroyed, and not only that, all that we stand for, our whole Advaita Sampradaya, its prestige is at stake. So therefore I want you all to help me. We have to eliminate this boy, Ramanuja." So what to do? There were many proposals, so the boys came up with different plots. This is the way we can eliminate Ramanuja. But they were rather gross. So Yadav Prakash didn't agree with them. He said, "You see, whatever method we find to eliminate Ramanuja, number one, should not implicate us in sinful activity. And number two, it should be such that it is not discovered that we were behind this act. So therefore I propose that we should go on a pilgrimage, and on the pretext of bathing in the Ganga, we should go, I will come with all of you as my students, you will join me, and Ramanuja can be invited to come. And when he is there in the Ganga, we will make him drown in the Ganga. We will ensure that he drowns. Of course, Yadav Prakash felt that because Ramanuja would be killed by this plot in the Ganga, dying in the Ganga is a meritorious death, therefore there would be no sin. That was a completely faulty understanding. Just because because a death in the Ganga is auspicious doesn't mean you can murder somebody by drowning him in the Ganga. Just like a passing away or leaving your body in Vrindavan is glorious, doesn't mean you take someone to Vrindavan and kill him and say now he has a glorious death. So Yadava Prakash was thinking like that. And so anyway, but his students agreed. So the students made a drama of going to Ramanuja. Ramanuja, we are missing you, please come back to our school. Ramanuja agreed, he came back. And shortly there was a plan to go to the Ganga for bath. So they settled out. They all moved. They informed their respective families, got their permission. And since the Guru was going with them, none of the families had any objection. So they were traveling and traveling. They had to walk all the way, can you imagine? From Kanchipuram to the Ganga, it's a really long walk. It was to take many, many weeks, naturally. As they were walking through the forest and so on, Govinda, the first cousin of Ramanuja, about whom I mentioned a brief while ago, he got wind of this conspiracy, of this plot, somehow or the other. And the other students also understood that Govinda had got wind of it. So they were trying their best to keep Ramanuja and Govinda as far apart as possible, so that Govinda would never get a chance to reveal to Ramanuja that this was what these students and their teacher had planned. So one time, however, when they were trudging through a forest, and Ramanuja stayed back on the pretext because he had to answer the call of nature, and the others went. Govinda saw this as an opportunity and he strayed away from the group, and he came to Ramanuja and quickly told him in a few words, this is a plot that the students and Yadav Prakash together have hatched for you. Please be careful, run away from here immediately. So, and then Govinda quickly left the place and went back to join his fellow students. Meanwhile, Ramanuja was shocked to hear this, but what could he do? So he had to leave. So he left. But he was in the middle of the forest and he had to go alone, and he was in a state of shock. He was walking and walking and walking, and he got completely lost. He didn't know where he was, he had no food, the thorns and the pebbles had really pricked and hurt the soles of his feet. He was completely exhausted. And as he lay down to rest under a tree, he suddenly heard some voices. And then he saw a hunter approaching, and he was there with his wife. And having seen a human being in the middle of this forest, Ramanuja was overjoyed. So he went up to him and spoke to him and said, where are you going? He said, we have come from the north and we are going on a pilgrimage to the south. So Ramanuja said, can I accompany you because I have lost my way? So they said, certainly come with us. So he accompanied them and they walked on. And as they walked on, then they walked for a long time and they were resting for the evening. And then he overheard, as he was just drifting into sleep, he overheard the hunter speaking to his wife, who was asking for him to bring water from some nearby water source. He said, there is a water source very nearby, don't worry. As soon as the dawn breaks, I will arrange for some fresh, cool water for you. And then Ramanuja fell asleep. When he woke up early next morning, he found that the hunter and his wife were missing. He searched all around and there was no place he could find them. He was really surprised what happened to them. And he was also worried now, how would he find his way out? But then fortunately he heard some other sounds, not far away. And he ran in that direction and he found the forest had ended. And lo and behold, he saw Kanchipuram. He saw the temple of Lord Varadaraj in the distance. And he saw the hustle bustle of the people going here and there, and he was completely bewildered. He thought to himself, we had traveled hundreds of miles from Kanchipuram towards the north. We traveled for many days. And how is it that in one night, this hunter and his wife have brought me so close to Kanchipuram, just on the outskirts of Kanchipuram? And then he realized that this was no hunter. This was directly the Supreme Lord himself. And Lakshmi Devi, who came in the guise of a hunter, and his wife to rescue me from this predicament. And he was overwhelmed with joy. And he began to sing the glories of the Lord and began to express his gratitude in terms of so many verses from the Bhagavad Gita, especially the 11th chapter when Arjuna is begging forgiveness for the offenses to Krishna that he had performed earlier, now that he has seen the universal form of Krishna. He says, my dear Lord, I did not recognize you when you appeared in front of me. I thought you were just a mere hunter. Anyway, a heart full of gratitude, and he returned to Kanchipuram. Meanwhile, Yadava Prakash and his fellow students were traveling on further towards the north. Govinda rejoined them, and when Ramanuja was not to be seen anywhere, they asked Govinda. Govinda said, I don't know. I did not meet him. I have no idea where Govinda is. He must have got lost in the forest. So there was a mixture of happiness and distress in the minds of Yadava Prakash and his students. The happiness was because of a hope that now that Ramanuja got lost in the forest, maybe he would die, not being able to find a way out. Or they were also sad because they thought, in case he lives, then our whole plot has failed. All our effort has been in vain. They were not so keen to go and take bath in the Ganga. That was just a pretext. So anyway, now they had come all the way, so they went ahead, they had bath in the Ganga. In the meanwhile, when they were in the Ganga, Govinda, while bathing, he got automatically in his palm a Shiva Linga. And he became attached to the worship of that Shiva Linga, so much so that he decided he wanted to go to the holy place of Lord Shiva near Tirupati called Srikalahasti. Some of you may have been there. It's a very famous pilgrimage place for Shaivas. So then he took leave of his master, saying he wanted to worship Lord Shiva. So Yadava Prakash granted him the permission and Govinda left, confident that Ramanuja would also be safe. In the meanwhile, having finished their pilgrimage, Yadava Prakash came back along with his students to Kanchipuram. And he was shocked to see Ramanuja in front of him. He feigned happiness. Oh Ramanuja, I'm so happy to see you. But of course, internally he was not happy at all. There was a turbulence of confusion and other emotions going on in his heart. How did he come back? That was the confusion. How did he manage to come out of the forest and come? And he was also unhappy because now his plan had failed. So anyway, he feigned ignorance of whatever had happened, and he feigned happiness as well. So anyway, he now began to respect. He heard the story of the hunter and how Ramanuja was transported overnight, hundreds of miles. And this extraordinary incident now was known to many others too. So now his derision turned to a little bit of respect for Ramanuja. So he told Ramanuja, come back to the school. Let us resume. You begin your studies once again. So for a second time, Ramanuja came back to the school. Once he had left. He left once, he came back before the plot. And this was the second time. Now in the meanwhile, two Sri Vaishnavas from Kanchipuram, who were devotees of Lord Varadharaj, they went to Sri Rangam, which was the main center for the Sri Vaishnavas. They had gone there to not only take darshan of Lord Ranganath, but very importantly to have darshan of the great Acharya, Yamuna, because they wanted some instructions from him. So when they reached Sri Rangam, they had an audience with Yamunacharya. Yamunacharya was very pleased to see these Vaishnavas from Kanchipuram, and he inquired about how the service of Lord Varadharaj was going on there. And he then asked, is there any other news you would like to give me that is of interest? And the two Vaishnavas said, yes, there is something that is really nice we want to tell you about. And that is, there is a very young lad in Kanchipuram whose name is Ramanuja. He is very brilliant. He is a great scholar. He is fearless. And above all, he is a great devotee. And he has understood the purport of the scriptures. His explanations of the Shastra are so accurate and so devotional. And on some occasions, he even differed with his own teacher, the well-known Yadava Prakash, who is an Advaitin. And he refuted Yadava Prakash's explanations with boldness, so much so that Yadava Prakash threw him out of the school. And the second time he actually hatched a plot to kill him. But such a miraculous event occurred that Ramanuja was saved and he's back now. But somehow the other Yadava Prakash has asked Ramanuja to come back to the school. Now, as far as Yamunacharya was concerned, even though he was involved heart and soul, body, mind and soul in the service of Lord Ranganath, every second of his day was devoted to the service of the Lord and the propagation of the Vaishnava mission. He had still one sorrow or one anxiety in his life. He was already very elderly, and he could not see anybody amongst his followers who could be the torch bearer of the Vaishnava faith after him. In other words, he could not find a suitable successor to him. Because even though there were many pure devotees amongst his followers, it's not enough to be simply a pure devotee to be an acharya. Being an acharya involves many other skills, including the ability to refute opposing ideologies, to be able to manage many things, to be able to set up temples. So you had to have a lot of other capabilities and other qualities which are required for one to be an acharya. So even though he had many pure devotees, but he could not see somebody who could actually be the acharya after him. So he was thinking and thinking and thinking. Then when he heard this news from the two Vaishnavas from Kanchipuram, he set his mind on Ramanuja. He said, yes, this Ramanuja will be the torch bearer of our faith after me. He became overjoyed. And he said to the two Vaishnavas, take me immediately with you to Kanchipuram. I want to see this Ramanuja. And he was praying fervently to Lord Ranganath that somehow or the other Ramanuja should be freed from the clutches of, or from the influence or the association of this Yadava Prakash. So he rushed from Srirangam to Kanchipuram, even though he was an old man, but still he walked briskly in his eagerness and enthusiasm to see this Ramanuja. Because it could only be a Vaishnava who could give interpretations or understandings of the Shastra like Ramanuja did. And not only the scholarship but also the boldness to confront and refute the teachings even of his own teacher. That was something that impressed Yamuna. So when Yamuna reached Kanchipuram, he went to the temple of Vadhari and had darshan there. And he prayed to the Lord, "Oh my dear Lord, by your mercy, the deaf can hear, the lame can run, the dumb can sing, the barren can bear children. So by your mercy, anything can happen. Please grant me this one favor. You are the king of those who award benedictions. Vara, the Raj. Vara means a boon. The means one who gives boons. And Raj means the king. There are many personalities who can grant us boons and benedictions, but the king among them all is the Supreme Lord. And his name there in Kanchipuram was Varadaraj. So please grant me this one boon, this one benediction, I beg of you. And that benediction is that let young Ramanuja be the torchbearer of our faith. And then suddenly he saw a group of people walking into the temple for darshan of the Lord, and then they left. And he recognized the leader of that group to be Yadava Prakash. And then Yamuna asked the two Vaishnavas who had come to Srirangam to meet him, which amongst his followers is Ramanuja? And then the Vaishnavas pointed out from a distance, there, that effulgent young man with the noble gait and with the pure expression on his face, that is the great noble Ramanuja. And Yamunacharya was very pleased to see Ramanuja. He gazed at him with a longing, when will Ramanuja come and become my successor? But suddenly there was some urgent message that was brought to him from Srirangam, and he immediately had to rush back to Srirangam. He did not even have the chance to speak to Ramanuja once. So he rushed back to Srirangam. So this episode happened. Yamuna returned to Srirangam and continued his prayers and his activities. Meanwhile, there was a particular incident that happened. Kanchipuram was within a certain kingdom, and there was a king there. Now the king's daughter, the princess, she was possessed by a ghost. And so she was behaving in a very odd way, as people do when they are possessed by ghosts. So the king had called so many people, exorcists, to try and exorcise this ghost. That means to drive away the ghost from the body of his daughter, but to no avail. There were failed attempts. Then upon inquiry about who could be strong enough to do this, the name of Yadavacharya was mentioned to the king by one of his ministers. So a messenger went out to Yadavacharya's school, and he informed it that the king was requesting him to come to drive out the ghost from the body of the princess. So Yadava Prakash was very haughty, proud. So he told the messenger of the king, go back to that princess and tell the ghost who's in the body of the princess, Yadava Prakash is commanding you to leave this body of the princess. So the messenger went back and he declared to the ghost in the body of the princess. And the ghost, speaking through the body of the princess, he mocked Yadav Prakash. He said, I'm not going to leave at all. If he wants to, let him come here and try. So then the messenger went back. Now it was a question of the prestige of Yadava Prakash. So he came personally and he stood in front of the princess who was behaving really in an abnormal manner. And then he spoke in a very loud, commanding voice. He said, "Leave the body of this girl immediately. I, Yadava Prakash, am commanding you to do so." And the ghost in the body, speaking through the mouth of the girl, the princess, laughed loudly. Yadava Prakash was chanting so many mantras furiously. And the ghost laughed and said, "Yadava Prakash, I am a Brahma Rakshasa. I was a Brahmin in my previous life. So I know all these mantras and everything. So all this mantra business is not going to do any good to me. It's not going to work. You don't even know your past." So Yadava Prakash said, "You speak as if you know my past and your past. So if you do know, tell me." So the ghost began to speak. He said, "Dear Yadava Prakash, let me tell you about your past life. In your last life, you were an iguana. Iguana is like a lizard type of it's a small creature, just not very big, like a lizard kind of thing. So you lived in the vicinity of the Madhurantaka tank of water, which is a holy place. One time, some Sri Vaishnavas were passing through. So they camped on the banks of this tank. And they had brought some prasadam with them. And they were honoring that prasadam. After which they left. But then, there was some morsels, some grains of that prasadam which had fallen down on the ground. And also there were some drops of water that they had been drinking which had spilled on the ground. And you were there waiting. And after they departed, you immediately went to that place and took the remnants of their Mahaprasadam. It was the prasadam of the Lord, eaten by Vaishnavas, and the remnants were remaining. So it was Mahaprasadam. And because you had this good fortune of eating their Mahaprasadam, therefore you got a body of a Brahmana in this life. And you were born here in Kanchipuram. As far as I am concerned, I was a Brahmin in the previous life. And I was performing these yagas. And I made many mistakes in performing those yagas. I was not a devotee of the Lord. So in the performance of these yagas, because I made some grave errors, my karma made me a ghost, a Brahma. Therefore I am a Brahma Rakshasa. So now, you know your past and you know my past. Yadav Prakash was stumped. So he said, "Now, so what can be done to get you out of the body of this girl?" He said, "Only one thing." So what is that? See that young man in your group? That man is the only one who can make me leave the body of this girl. So then Yadav Prakash was desperate to maintain his prestige, his good name. So he told Ramanuja, "Ramanuja, do something about it." So Ramanuja said, "Please leave the body of this princess." So the ghost said, "I will leave, but wait, not yet. I will not leave till you place your feet on my head." That means the princess's head. So Ramanuja agreed. So the princess bent down and Ramanuja placed his feet on her head and blessed her. But before doing that, Ramanuja said, "Wait a minute. You are saying that you will leave the body of this princess as soon as I place my hands and my feet on your head. But what is the proof that you will have left this body?" So then the ghost replies, speaking through the mouth of the princess, "I will transfer myself into that tree over there ahead. And you will understand this by the fact that that branch over there will break and fall to the ground. Then you will understand that I have left the body of this girl." So then Ramanuja placed his feet on the head of this princess, and lo and behold, all of a sudden she became normal. She suddenly became very embarrassed and feeling awkward. What am I doing here lying on the floor like this? And what is going on here? And she became to her normal self. And in the distance, there was a loud cracking sound. And the tree that ghost had pointed out to, the branches, one of the branches in the tree had cracked and fallen to the ground. And thus everybody understood that the ghost had now left the body of the princess. In this way, Yadav Prakash, his reputation was preserved. But Yadav Prakash was now feeling more and more threatened and insecure again. Now that my student is going to get more glory and fame than me, he is much more empowered than me. And one time again, when Yadav Prakash was giving a wrong explanation on one of the quotations from one of the verses from the scripture, Ramanuja again pointed out the grave errors in that interpretation. This time it was too much again for Yadav Prakash to take. So he told him, you go away from here now. Don't come back ever again into my school. So Ramanuja, again without speaking a word, walked away from there, and he felt very glad that he had now left Yadava Prakash. Because Yadav Prakash was such a contaminating influence, and he was giving such offensive explanations of the scriptures. And young Ramanujacharya did not want to be part of this. So he was also happy. So he came back to his mother and explained the situation. Then now I have quit permanently the school of Yadava Prakash. So the mother in any case was not that much inclined that her son should keep on studying. She was a devotee, a pure devotee herself. Enough of this studying business. You just go and serve Varadaraj. So she directed him to a great devotee whose name was Kanchipurna. And she said, go to Kanchipurna and ask him what service you should do. So in great humility, Ramanuja approached Kanchipurna. Ramanuja was a great scholar. He was a Brahmin. Kanchipurna was not a Brahmana. He was from a Vaishya family. But nevertheless, Ramanuja dealt with Kanchipurna with great humility and respect, understanding the exalted nature of the devotion of Kanchipurna. Kanchipurna had such pure devotion for the Lord that it is said that he could converse with the Lord. Varadaraj would talk to him. And Ramanuja understood. So he came to Kanchipurna and respectfully asked him for some service. So Kanchipurna said, you were bringing some water when you had given up your school in the middle for some time. You were carrying water from the Salai from this particular well for the service of Varadaraj. So why don't you resume that service? So Ramanuja was very happy to receive that. This was a very menial service. He had to go every day, draw well from the water from the well, and bring it for the service of Varadaraj, carrying it heavy pots of water. And Ramanuja was most happy to do this service. He didn't think, I am such a great scholar. I have defeated Yadava Prakash in arguments, and here Kanchipurna is telling me to do menial service. Why doesn't he tell me to go and preach or something like that? Or do some other exalted service? But Ramanuja was not thinking like that, because he understood the nature of Krishna consciousness. It is more important to please the Lord by humble service than it is to try to make a grand show of one's abilities, of one's learning and so on, just to impress people and get name and fame and prestige in this world. Jiva Goswami was also like that. He served Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis, in such a humble way, doing menial services, even though Jiva Goswami as a young man had a reputation as a great scholar. So then Ramanuja served under the guidance of Kanchipurna and rendered so many nice service to Lord Bharataraj. And if you wish to know what happened after this, what transpired after Ramanuja was continuing to serve Lord Bharataraj in this way, then you will have to come back at 3:30 this afternoon. Shri Ramanujacharya ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.